Welcome to Brownsville Minute, a community-conscious conversation and a platform that provides information, wellness, love, and unity all on a digital platform. And our goal is to try to make sure that our community residents are informed, conscious, and that we are connecting the dots on a virtual platform. The Brownsville Minute is designed for everyone. Please join us with the Brownsville Minute. Well, hello there, good people. It is so good to see you. I am Anita Pierce, and welcome to the Brownsville Minute. I will be your host, your producer, your behind-the-scenes person, all on a digital platform. So welcome. I have the good fortune of interviewing some really wonderful and amazing change agents within the community. A lot of them you may not know, some of them you do know. I have the good pleasure of being honored and being supported and having someone support me today on the Brownsville Minute. Why this is so amazing to me, because one of the things that I know is that when you have individuals who on a day-to-day basis are working to make the communities in which they have grown up, were born and raised, and are now serving, it becomes one of those things as not only as a labor of love, but also really understanding that they are really passionate and connected to the community and looking to make changes from within by helping to support those changes that currently exist. I have the honor of being able to interview this evening on the Brownsville Minute, Brother Andre T. Mitchell, who wears many hats within the realm of East New York and also neighboring Brownsville. So without further ado, I don't want to give all the introduction away. I think that the work that Mr. Mitchell and his team is doing speaks for itself. So I am excited to bring to the table Mr. Andre T. Mitchell. Hello there. Welcome.
Hello, how are you, Anita?
How you doing?
So I'm doing so much better now that I see you and that I'm on your great show. Thank you for asking.
Well, it's good to have you. It's good to have met you in person and now to speak with you virtually. So I actually want to jump right on into the conversation because you have a very long and rich history connected between both Brownsville and also East New York. And for those who don't know, would you please just tell them just a little itty bit about more about who
Yes.
you are as a person?
I'm so again thankful for the opportunity to be on the Brownsville Minute. And more mainly because I'm a product of both great communities of Brownsville and East New York. I grew up in Brownsville. In my younger days, when I went to elementary school, I grew up on Tapscott and Sutter, and I went to PS 156 on Grafton and Legion and Sutter, and I graduated. I lived on Amboy Street and Sutter, and Blake, and for many, actually we lived there twice in my life, and from the shelter there on Amboy, we was fortunate to get an apartment in a housing development in East New York, nearby East New York, called the Unity Plaza Houses.
Hmm.
And so I'm a proud product of both Brownsville and East New York. And I'm always proud to tell people that, having grown up in both of these two neighborhoods, that they're basically aligned with each other. They're joined by the hip. It was like, as you said, the beginning of my lifelong journey of being a servant, a public servant, in both those communities now. You know, um, I went to public school, went to middle school in East New York, and eventually to high school at Thomas Jefferson. And then, from there on, I just stayed committed to serving, my community. And now today, as you know, I'm the founder and executive director of a great nonprofit organization called Man Up Incorporated. I also now chair the community board out here in East New York and parts of Brownsville and Spring Creek, Community Board 5. And, I have a business also in East New York. And, I'm just constantly just thinking about how much more we can add to our beautiful neighborhoods.
And beautiful it is, contrary to, what is on public display out there. So, just curious, what inspired you to deepen your engagement within a community? Because, oftentimes, one may get discouraged and
Mhm.
kind of leave and don't come back ever to what is perceived as not beautiful. Why did you decide to deepen your relationship?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, again, I grew up in a single parent household. My mother, she had 8 kids on public assistance, right? Struggling to get us through and teaching us along the way about mannerism and how to appreciate the little things, and just having a lot of like love for your family and your community. I learned that all through my family life, just having a pride in where I grew up. I mean, as you know, the history of our great community, we get an unfair shake in the eyes of the media, as it relates to some of the negatives, but what a lot of people don't talk about is the positives. And so I wanted to be able to be an example of the positive things that come out of Brownsville, positive, things that come out of East New York, so that people can really look at us differently and understand that we're human out here. We've just been deprived, of some natural, basic life needs and resources, but we've made the best out of the bad situations. And there's roses that are growing out of these communities every day. And so I wanted to make sure that I'd be an inspiration for so many other little kids that have grown up out here like I did, that look outside and may not understand what's going on in terms of the infrastructure, a lot of the things that are happening in and around about us. But know that if you reach deep down inside, you allow those things to help motivate you, encourage you to achieve certain goals and to reach certain heights. That's been my motivating factor. The fact that I grew up, the way I did, where I was, and how I wanted to change that narrative.
And also for me in learning that no experience that we've gone through has been wasted thus far. That's what I've
Absolutely.
learned so far. So, in transitioning to the role of business owner, executive director, and also community advocate through pretty much all the work that you do. Would you mind telling us a little bit about first how you are really actively engaged in your community through first as a small business owner? I want to talk from that perspective first because I think that they're all what you do is really connected. So I'll
Yes.
start with there first.
Well, on a small business front, as you know, we grew up, we are part of a consumer nation,
Right.
right? We was raised, just taught to go to the store for our parents, and spend our money, and give it to who we thought was business owners and property owners. I mean, we yielded a lot of our, economic power to them. We, as you know, we are miseducated about poverty. I thought that I was poor. I thought that I was broken. But in fact, there's nothing poor about us as our people. but our spirit, and sometimes there's nothing, about our mentality. Some things that we know that, when we realize that we actually have economic power, we begin to start saying, okay, how do I tap into that? So growing up out there in Brownsville in East New York, my entire youth life, I just was a consumer. And then, I always aspired to, I've always looked up to the business owners. And then an opportunity, came about for me to one day take over a bodega that was closing down, ran by a Dominican businesswoman. And she was in our community for all my youth and all my life. And so we knew each other respectfully well. When she said that she was moving back to the Dominican Republic and that she was going to be closing down, I asked her just out of curiosity, who was she turning this business over to? And she had mentioned that, she was turning it back over to her landlord. And then that was the first time I got realized that I'm like, I thought you was the landlord all these many years. I thought you owned. She was like, no, I'm a tenant. I'm just renting, the property. Like most of the businesses that we see in our neighborhoods, they're just tenants. They're renting the commercial space. And so I asked if she would be willing to introduce me to the property owner and if I could possibly have a chance to speak to them about wanting to not keep the bodega alive that I grew up around, but to convert it into something that me and my friends, we always talked about wanting to be in business, something that we wanted to open up in the community. And so she did just that. And I was fortunate to meet who I was surprised to learn was a Caribbean, a black woman from the Caribbeans who owned the actual property. And that relationship started and we was able to convince her to allow us to lease the property. And we worked into this whole idea of opening up a seafood restaurant. This is back in the 90s, the mid 90s and later 90s. And we attempted to do that. But at the same time, I was naive. I had no knowledge of business. I had no knowledge of, just how to operate or anything. And I learned on the go and on the cuff pretty much. I know, when we out there in the streets and we going through the things we go through, even then, growing up as a young person and out there hustling, I didn't know that I had transferable skills.
Right.
And so I was able to apply the same methodology that I had when I was out there hustling to the seafood business. And then, I just to try to work it from there. And that business, unfortunately, our people, we don't support our businesses as best as we're supposed to. I was unfortunate. I had to close that business down. That was really hard for me, but I didn't let that stop me. I vowed to stay, in the eyes of the community, and another opportunity came available around the corner to that establishment that I was, and I was able to rent it. So now it became easier for me to know how to approach and how to negotiate for commercial space. And I was able to, obtain another property right around the corner from where the original seafood restaurant was. And I started out as a lounge in a rental space, and again, did the best that I can. Our people, it's hard to convince our people to do business with one another. And eventually I had to convert it. And today it's been converted into, I would like to think, East New York's first Black owned candy and cake shop. We sell ice cream, candy, cake, and shakes. It's called the House of Sweets, and it's located at 530 Sutter Avenue. And we've been there now for many years, just still struggling, trying to convince people to do business with us. But yes, that's been my intro into the business part of my world.
And now through connecting with what you do with Man Up, um, that is probably well where I'm familiar with the work that you do through Man Up. Not even really with the community board, but more so
Yes.
the work that you do with Man Up. So how do you connect um, your engagement with that work within the community as pretty much as a labor of love almost?
Yes, and it's been just that, a labor of love. I've always loved my community. I always wanted best for my neighborhood. To be fully honest and transparent, I went to prison for a crime I did not commit.
Hmm.
And so while incarcerated, I worked on myself and I vowed to improve upon myself and do what my mother taught me to do, when I was younger. And when I came home from prison, I learned that, people in my neighborhood, the younger people glorified prison. And I was like, no way. I had a rough time in prison. It was hard for me because I didn't commit the crime. So I started dedicating and volunteering myself in my local community center and talking to youth groups about the alternatives to incarceration.
Right.
And that was my give back. I would work when I first came home. My first job, I was a messenger, a foot messenger in Manhattan, in Midtown Manhattan. And every day that I came home from there, I would go to the community center and I would volunteer. And after my passion to, really turn the mindset of how, we glorify prison and crime in our communities, an opportunity opened up for me to be a youth specialist in a housing complex. And from there, the ball began to, my activism, speaking up for my community, being able to advocate for my community became more relevant. I was fortunate to meet my mentor. At that time, he was just a leadership development trainer. His name is Charles Barron. And today he's our state assembly member and he's our future council member. And I've had that relationship with him now close to 30 years. And he helped, introduce me to more levels of activism because he was the chief of staff for Reverend Herbert Daughtry over at the House of the Lord Church. And so, every big person in the movement comes through the House of the Lord Church. And so I was blessed to be that young man who sat right on the side, and I was the gopher. I was the guy who they sent to the store and to make the copies. And I couldn't speak at most of those meetings. I had to just listen and learn. And I did just that. I was there alongside them as they organized large protests and movements. And then, unfortunately, in 2003, there was a shooting in East New York of a child. It was said that there were several children that got shot in a shootout in East New York. And myself, being the person that I am in the community, and again, that time he was Councilmember Barron, Charles Barron, and we rushed to Brookdale Hospital to visit to make sure that the children that we heard that got shot, we wanted to check on the families and make sure that they was all right. And we learned that one of the children, 8-year-old, his name was Deshaun Hill. He was the only shooting victim, thank God. But he had expired from his injuries.
Wow.
And the other two children was his other little brother and sister. And they were there, but they didn't get shot. As you can imagine, hearing the tragedy of an 8-year-old, being shot, it just turned this whole community upside down. And really, it became a media circus. Yeah. And so it was my opportunity to really try to pull together, a community that was, really puzzled and didn't know what to do next. And I started to work with I started to coach the people in the neighborhood to say, we got to take back our neighborhood. We really cannot allow for this type of senseless shootings and killings to take place. And we began to do that. And we walked around the neighborhood, started doing what was called like community patrols. Right. And we began to talk to the people on the streets, the young people mostly, and find out what's going on in their life. Like what makes them want to, stay outside in the cold and hustle and eventually get involved in, gun violence. And to be honest with you, Anita, their responses was genuine. They talked about how, there was no place for them to go. Right. The community centers was closed. The churches were closed. Nobody was hiring them. Nobody gave them a chance. It wasn't like they weren't looking, because they may have been in jail or prison and nobody was giving them a chance. And so I can relate to that. Right. That was my experience as well. And I said to those, individuals at that time, look, I can relate, but that's still not an excuse for us to be out here with senseless violence. If I dedicate myself, if I will be willful to go to the table for you and talk to the people that I know about our issues, would you be willing to give us some days of peace? Wow. And so they agreed. I talked to the mother of Deshaun Hill, who passed away. She also had the 2 remaining children. She was kind of confused. What would she do next? She had to go back to work.
Oh, man.
And how would she be able to tend to her 2 other children? And I told her, you can turn them over to me. Wow. I will watch out for them. I will literally pick them up. I volunteered. I picked them up from public school, and I had them with me until she got off from work. And then she would pick them up. And then I eventually got a space donated to me of a basement location. Wow. And that's where Man Up Inc. started. I got incorporated in 2004. I received my 501c3 in 2005. And so today, since then, we've been open, serving young people as young as 5 years old and older, all the way up to teenagehood, to adulthood. We work with their families. We work with their fathers. We work with their mothers. We work with the elders. We provide year-long service and programs in our community because, this is a 24-hour, 7-day adventure. And I'm proud to date to say that now, 18 years later, that we are no longer a volunteer-based organization, but in fact, we are a multi-million-dollar operation. We are the beacon and the lighthouse in our communities. We service Brownsville. We are based in Brownsville out of Noble Drew Ali houses, out of Noble Drew, Newport Gardens. We work throughout Brownsville and Marcus Garvey Village. We've done so much work over in Brownsville, throughout Brownsville, and we're based in East New York, also in a number of locations. In Canarsie, we're also opening a new office in Canarsie. And 2 years ago, we started in Bedford-Stuyvesant. So I'm just really pleasured and honored to be at the helm of something that started less than 20 years ago and doing this kind of work.
So I'm gonna ask in a question because I'm always now this is a curious question, right?
Yes.
Because the work that you are doing requires a lot, right?
Yeah.
How do
Tell
you
me.
that's you said that's an understatement. How do you how do you manage self-care throughout all of this?
Very good question.
How?
Well, you have to take this work on. It's so massive
Right.
that you have to take it in proportions, in moderations. You cannot think that I am going to solve or heal the world, right? I have to be paused with this and patient with this process. I have to be calculated. See, a lot of the work that we do, we're professionals, and we're experts in our own right. We know that we have to take one step at a time. Because if the individual service provider is not okay, then how do I better help the community?
You can't.
I'm blessed. I have a very cooperative family. My children, my family, my loved ones, my brothers and my sisters, they all have had my back, from day one. They volunteered alongside me. They participated. Now, some of them are actually part of our employed team. I'm actually, very fortunate to have a team of people from the community who have helped me. I haven't done anything by myself. This is too massive to do it by myself. So we play team ball out here, Anita. We have a way in which when somebody needs to take a timeout, we allow that person to do that while we take up the flank. And we make sure that everybody's okay at the end of the day, because it is massive. And I pause myself. I measure myself, my intake. I make sure that I don't consume too much trauma because a lot of things in our community is vicarious.
Yep.
And I make sure that I don't personalize it. I don't take it home with me. At the end of the day, our people have been put in this predicament unbeknownst to them.
Right.
It's been unfair. We have been victimized so many times that, I got to make sure I do my push-ups in the morning. I got to make sure that I say my prayers and have my meditations and things of that nature at the end of the day. And that's how I'm able to do all the work that I do.
Woo, yep. Important. So thank you for sharing that because they think that oftentimes that, that when you're out doing the community work or community love work, that you are Superman or Superwoman. And a lot of times you have a squad working with to support you in this cause. So I really appreciate you sharing that insight. So you are the Community Board 5 chairperson.
Yes.
How?
You said how?
How?
Because civic responsibility is so very important. I believe in civic responsibility, taking care of your own backyard, clean up your own backyard before you clean up somebody else's. And so even though we all have day jobs and night jobs, I think there's still a portion of our time that we need to reinvest back in our community and don't expect to get paid for it. So when we began to focus on East New York, as a coalition, we had a plan. Again, our leader was Mr. Barron. He's a visionary in his own right. And we knew that if we use East New York as a template, as a model of how communities can gain back control, then we can take this on the road, go to nearby Brownsville, go to Canarsie, go to other communities throughout the city, and then eventually throughout the state and beyond. So we targeted, the various different so-called power structures in our neighborhood. Most communities don't know about the community boards. Community board was one of our focal points. So at the end of the day, when he was council member, he had a certain amount of appointees, and he appointed us to this community board to serve voluntarily. At that time, I was up against the old guard, those that were entrenched in the politics in the community, those that knew, just how neighborhoods ran and operated at that time, and they wrestled against change. So we had a long internal battle of how we was going to regain this board. But at the end of the day, I held my position, and then the opportunity became available where we felt that it was time for us to run for chair, that we wanted to lead the community board, and I was asked to be the choice of the person that everybody would support. And I was eventually elected. Now I've been the chair of Community Board 5 for the last 8 years. And I've been on the board for 14 years. And I've been chair for the last 8 of those 14 years. And so, I mean, it is a pleasure to be the chair of an elected, a chairperson of a community board, because when you look at the things that go on in and around about us in the community board has some say in what goes on. We're an advisory board, so we don't necessarily have subpoena power, but we do have the power to call these people before us so that we can ask the critical questions on behalf of the community. And then we can ask for certain things inside their proposals that don't exist, i.e., how do we mandate or make sure that people from the community are employed through these projects? How do we make sure that there's some of the profits that are made in these businesses that want to come in and are reinvested back into our neighborhood? How is the police going to police? How are the hospitals going to provide us with the best healthcare systems that we need in our neighborhoods? And how do we look at our parks? How do we look at our seniors? How do we make sure our seniors and our youth are being taken well care of and informed of all the things that are going on in their neighborhood? And so the community board has all those facets, and I'm able to, like I said, chair that process. I'm able to make recommendations on behalf of the community board to the borough board, which is held oversaw by the borough presidents, and eventually it goes before the city council and ultimately up to the mayor. So if anything, we do have some part and some say and some stake in the game, but I'm able to do that again because I'm like how you weave, how you crochet and how you blend certain things. I think that all of this is still all in the same direction. I'm not going against the grain. All of these things complement each other, and so that's how I'm able to incorporate it into one life.
It's all in alignment. And
It's all in alignment.
I recently stepped down from Community Board 16 because there were a number of conflicts that I was concerned about.
Wow.
And why as a small business owner, and I'm also certified with the city and state as a minority women business enterprise, I
Yes.
didn't want to put the pressure on any of the local um, chairperson, district
Yes.
manager. I didn't want
hmm
it to be perceived that I was getting business, because you do have to maintain
Yes.
a clear conflict of interest.
Absolutely.
But I'm still engaged, and
Yes.
so
Absolutely.
you can still find ways, in my opinion, to still be engaged at the community board level without having voting rights. You can attend all the
Yes.
community board
Absolutely.
meetings.
That's right.
You can help to write letters,
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
whatever it is in order your part, in your part. And it's funny that you mentioned about the community board, because I only got engaged with the community, like really engaged, when I had my daughter. And
Wow.
that's because I born and raised, lived there always, but
hmm
would kind of like just sleep in Brownsville and then go other places until
Okay. Right.
I was made to sit down by having a little person. And then because I was
Excellent.
always involved some way, somehow doing community work, I had to figure out what I was going to do with my time. And what better way was to volunteer your time,
Yes.
and to learn about how you can add your voice, help to advocate for things within the community. Like I had no clue about how much comes through the community board until
Yes.
I sat and became more involved and engaged that way. So I salute you
Thank you.
for what you do,
Yes.
because it is
And
not
most people don't know, and it's not easy. It is a voluntary position.
no.
We are not paid to serve. That means that you have to have some other thing that drives you to want to go and attend these meetings on a monthly basis. And you have to have a passion for your community. At the end of the day, I love Brownsville. I love East New York. You
Mm,
know, I love every other neighborhood throughout this city or state or country that's that's disadvantaged. You know, but I also love teaching them how do we take advantage of those disadvantages.
right.
You know, how do we come out on top at the end of the day when people have counted us out wrong or counted us out? How do we stay in the game? So that's what I love doing, just being that type of person in that midst.
And so if one wanted to be supportive in your work on the community board, what opportunities exist currently?
Oh, the community board, as you mentioned, is open to the entire community at large to participate. Today, we're blessed to have, as you could be as young as 16 years old and be appointed to the community board and have voting power on the community board level. But if you're a community member who just wants to be involved, then you can also be active on a committee of your choice, just based on your interests. And today, you can be actually voted onto that committee and vote on that committee level about the things that come before that committee. And then these things are brought before the general body where another vote takes place. So community people who are interested can be involved in all different levels of their community board. It's a voluntary position, but it's noteworthy, and it's very much rewarding at the end of the day. I would love to encourage people to just really get involved, go to their attend their meetings, listen to what's happening on and around about your neighborhood, be in the knowing so that you can take that information back to your housing development, to your block association, to your building, to your peers, and let them know that these are things that are forthcoming, these are things that are going on, and that they need to be involved in it. You know, you got to be in the know. You can't complain if you are not trying to do all that you can. To me, you don't have the right to complain.
Mm,
So to just complain is not enough, but to be involved and to be open and willful to want to work and to be a part of the solution. Now you have the right to complain. You have the right to question when it's going on. So there's people who sit on their couches every day and look at the TV and they point fingers. Those are called couch activists, right? But they don't even talk to the very people on their block or in front of their building. They don't engage, especially in most cases, our youth or our seniors. There's so many different ways that people can be involved and make a difference. We again are beautiful people. We always made a difference, and there's no reason why in today's day and time we don't continue to do that.
so I am going to ask a different question. We're in the midst still of a global pandemic, which I
Yes,
know that our communities were hit and impacted probably a lot more than others, because we know that it's systematic.
absolutely.
It's a lot of layers, right?
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
as we move to some form of normalcy post COVID, are there any additional work that your organizations are going to help to elevate the residents of East New York and also neighboring organizations, neighboring communities?
No question. As you said, when America catches a cold, Black America is suffering already from pneumonia,
Right.
right? So when this pandemic came upon us, it wasn't surprising to some of us that we were bedrocks and that we were the meccas of where, the real suffering was taking place. We seen it firsthand. Again, I'm blessed to be surrounded by so many other committed people in the community that when that pandemic came down our, street, we didn't sit back and, just allow it to consume us. We studied it, and then we made a real conscious decision that we wanted to combat it. We wanted to push it back. We wanted to make sure that our neighborhoods in Brownsville, mostly in East New York, were well informed and made aware of this new disease called COVID-19. And so we was out there, not on the front line. We were out there on the first line. We were out there first. And in our communities, we were talking to communities, knocking on doors, checking on our seniors and our elders. We was making sure that we had the proper, protection equipment. We wanted to make sure that we had food and there was supplies. We were out there. We gave out tens and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of supplies and equipment to our public, to our people, and information, mostly about awareness and how to make sure that you stay healthy during this pandemic. Today we still, as you mentioned, we're still in the midst of it. So the beat goes on. We are constantly staying on top of all of the nuances, making sure that people know where the testing centers are, where the vaccination centers are, what are some of the pros and cons of said vaccination. We've held forums and town halls so that people can voice their opinion, their frustrations, and their voices can be heard. So we've actually now, we've at a place where we understand our place in the fold. We cannot, not be informed. We cannot, be quiet and dormant. We have to be allowed. We have to say it loud. And we need to make sure that our people are well informed. So that's what we're doing today when it relates to this pandemic.
And so, in wrapping up, feels like the conversation went so rapidly because it's always
Mhm.
the good ones that goes rapidly. I wanted to have you vision over the next 3 to 5 years and all the work that you have accomplished thus far. What will be your legacy? Or what will be some of the work that, at least within the next 3 to 5 years, that you can sit back and say that we've actually really made some real headways in some of the work with, or elevating the community?
Yes, we are in the process, and we're documenting this as we speak.
Mhm.
Because a lot of times, we do all this work and we've just been working so much, we don't take a time out to really look at the embodiment, look at the accomplishments that we made over the years. I'm actually co-authoring a book called How East New York Became the Place to Be in Less Than 20 Years.
Wow.
It's a follow-up book to How East New York Became a Ghetto that was written in the 70s. And we're writing a follow-up book on how East New York became the place to be in less than 20 years. And now I say that respectfully because who would have thought that Brownsvilles and East New Yorks will be eyed by so many? How now we are fighting people back from trying to come into our community. People who would never wanted to come this far into Brooklyn before. We have to now fight to stop gentrification in our communities. We want to make sure that at the end of our day, the legacy that we see is that we are in full control of our community. And when we mean that, we mean we control our businesses, our dollars and cents that go throughout here. We control the curriculums in our schools. We control the policies that our police officers and law enforcement officers and healthcare professionals will follow that will honor and respect the culture of the people who have been out here the longest, the indigenous people of our community. We will empower our young people. I see, more and more young people as entrepreneurs, as leaders that are on the front line, people who are taking over the politics positions and leading the way into the future. Our agencies and our nonprofit service providers are community based that came from grassroots organizations, not who I call poverty pimps, who have found their way and planted themselves in amongst us and say that they are missionaries and that they're here to help us. but all they really wanted was our zip codes and our social security numbers. But people who are out here who's servicing the people because they love the people regardless. And we're providing them with the most quality service that everybody deserves and the quantity of services, making sure that we're getting our fair share of our tax dollars that we pay and that it comes back into our neighborhoods through these different forms. So, in my opinion, I see a healthier community that is not a food desert, but literally where there's healthy foods and awareness campaigns, cultural campaigns that promote it. I see a community that's free, violence free, where we have a people that love themselves and love one another. I put the neighbor back in hood when I talk. I don't say I come from the hood. I come from a neighborhood. Okay. And we need to go back to being neighbors again, looking after one another's family, making sure that we look into making sure that our elders and our seniors and our women, our single parents, that they have a support network in place so that we can help raise their boys to become men if that's what they help they need. I see a neighborhood that is into community policing, versus over policing. I see a community that I said is that's thriving. I want to move on to. I do want to live a long life. So, like I said earlier, I have to do this in moderations. I do, at the end of the day, want to also, I want to prosper too. you know, I think I deserve a piece of the prosperity. If I'm the one that labored the most and hard and long, why can't I also set up something where I'm also in receipt of some of the prosperity so that I can share this with my family as well? So that I can turn to my children and my grandchildren, and so that they can see that when you devote yourself to your community, that there are benefits to doing so, that there's accomplishments that do so. And at the end of the day, I know this is all in, our universe's hands. At the end of the day, I just want people to say that he was a good and faithful servant and that he did the best that he could with the little bit that he had. That's really what my legacy hopefully would look like.
And the great gifts that you are obedient to share. I mean,
Yes.
and so on that note, I got some rapid fire questions that I like to ask all of my guests because, we always have like the heavy stuff and then, just 2 or 3 rapid questions.
So,
Pizza or hamburgers?
I don't eat beef. I don't eat pork, and I do love turkey burgers over pizza. I don't really like, too much of the cheese and the dough and all that. So I would say turkey burgers.
All right, turkey burgers. So smoothies or ice cream, or do you do dairy? That's a question.
I do dairy. I love ice cream. I grew up, cake and ice cream. Again, like I said, I have an ice cream parlor,
Mhm.
that's a part of my candy store. So we do have like 16 flavors. And so I know that, I love ice cream. Everybody who doesn't love ice cream, but I do know that I got to get into my smoothies as well, but I prefer ice cream.
Favorite vegetable?
The favorite vegetable that I have, my goodness, I'm going to say what, lettuce and tomatoes.
What kind of lettuce? Now we getting a little bit too deep.
My sister, the baby. Um, what is that? The sweet lettuce, the baby lettuce, things like that. I don't know. That's right.
So, favorite hip hop artist?
My favorite hip hop artist today is Nas. He was a lyricist. He also was rugged and he had some streets and real rugged, raw sort of likeness about him that I admire. But he was also very prophetic. He was very good with words, and he was able to really paint or tell a really, I mean, a clear picture of what it's like growing up in the housing projects. And today he's just an outstanding, young man that's doing so many fabulous things. So Nas is my favorite.
So I'm gonna throw this one at you, and I'm curious to see how you're gonna respond. What's your favorite borough?
Brooklyn, you don't know? I am so Brooklyn. I mean, every day, all day. Don't get me wrong. You see my jacket? I got Brooklyn on my clothes. I mean, I love the 5 boroughs. Don't get me wrong. I got peoples in throughout the city of New York, but I am favoritized. I'm a Brooklyn Net fan. You know, you can see my hat right now. You see it. You know, I am. I was so happy when they brought a team to Brooklyn, a professional basketball
Right.
team to Brooklyn. And honestly, I remember what it was like, the controversy surrounding that arena. But I think I have to admit that that was one of the best things that they could do for the borough.
Yeah.
My job and our goal is, how do we bring those nets and the resources and the benefits from that arena downtown to Brownsville and to East New York?
Let it
That's my quest. How do we extend those resources? They need to know that they're part of the whole Brooklyn and not just the
downtown.
fancier parts of Brooklyn.
Yep. Because we fancy on our side too.
Oh,
So
we got a lot of swag. You already know.
yeah. But the reason why I asked that is because every guest who's from Brooklyn give me that. They start off with the, how dare you ask me that
Yeah, that's
question?
like, come on, that's self-explanatory. You know, Anita, we already know. That's no, that's without question. Brooklyn
Oh,
is the
we
best
we say Brooklyn all day.
all
It's
day.
So on that note, Brother Mitchell, I am so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule to come onto the Brownsville Minute. We
It has
look
been an
forward
honor.
to we look forward to having you come back again and again to be able to share any
I'm
community
here.
updates.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
just a matter of coordination. Thank you so much. I think this is an outstanding show. My salutes and my credos to you and to your team. I'm glad we met when we met. I think this is an excellent platform. It's very professional. You're an excellent hostess.
Thank you.
I would encourage you to keep that up. And we're going to talk about how we bring this even over to the East New York Minute. How about that?
Oh, I love it. Giving us more work to do. I say,
Yes.
hey.
Hey, that's what's up. That's a
All right.
fact. We deserve it.
We sure do. And thank you so much for your time. I look
Thank
forward
you.
to talking to you and seeing you again in person. Stay safe and lots of love
Likewise.
to you and your family.
Thank you, sister.
Thank
Likewise.
you.
Have a good one. Thank you, Anita.
All right, you
Appreciate
too.
you.
Take good care.
Peace. Likewise.
Take care. And this is what makes it so amazing that we have different community leaders that we can definitely connect with. I am really excited to have had the opportunity to finally meet the wonderful Mr. A.T. Mitchell. And so if you are looking to learn more about work and how you can get involved with the community board 5, please check out the website below, brooklyncb5.org. And if you're also interested in becoming a part of the community board, as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, there are opportunities for young people to be a part of the community board. And even though it's a volunteer position, you still have the opportunity to be able to advocate for your community, be able to bring collectively resources within a community. And also, Mr. Mitchell is a part of Man Up Inc. If you want to find out how you can become involved with his organization, the link is down there. So, on behalf of myself and all of the wonderful people watching the Brownsville Minute, I want to thank you for joining us for another episode. And stay tuned for community announcements.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.